Welcome to the Age of Lions podcast, a platform and community dedicated to bringing purpose, strategy, and calling to kingdom-minded people who are 50 plus and excited about their next chapter. Here's your host, Mark Clement.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 35 of the Age of Lions podcast. We're so glad that you're here today. We have a really special episode lined up today as we're getting to this 35th episode. I've really found myself in a state of kind of reflecting over the last several weeks and really since the first of the year, just about all that has been happening with the podcast, the listeners we've had, the comments we're getting, the guests we've had. I mean, it's just been really amazing to me to be part of it and to see how God's kind of been moving through it, using different stories, different testimonies, different people to share some really powerful things, really challenging things. And like I say almost every episode, this is not in any way about me. I'm literally just the facilitator, the host. I'm doing this specifically to learn how to age better. And these are things I've been learning. I hope you've been learning them as well. But I thought it would be a great opportunity as we're kind of at this milestone of 35 episodes to basically go back through and highlight some of the things that have been kind of repeating topics. They've come up over and over again. Different people have talked about them in different ways, and we've learned a lot about them. And I thought it'd be fun to kind of recap. So if you're new to the podcast, this is a great way for you to kind of get caught up. Hear some of the guests. We're going to play a couple of small clips here and there, some quotes from some of the guests on when they made a comment about this topic, and then we're going to unpack it a little bit. And so I think it's going to be really fun. I'm excited to get into it. Before we do that, I do want to say, wherever you are, hope you're having a great spring. I know here in Alabama, where I am in Birmingham, spring is a crazy time of year here. So case in point, it's Sunday the 15th, right before we release this on the 16th. We're recording this. It's almost 80 degrees outside. It's sunny. It's beautiful. It's warm. It's unbelievable. Tonight, we have a line of storms come through. We've got tornado warnings all through the state. It's crazy. Everybody's on high alert. The warmest it's going to be tomorrow is at midnight tonight. It's just one of those things where it's dropping all through the night. It's going to drop all day tomorrow. Tuesday and Wednesday in parts of the state, we've got snow warnings, and it might snow, it might freeze, it might sleet and hail and tornadoes, and it's insane. And that's just kind of what we live with in Alabama. And I've lived here most of my 57 years, other than a few years in Kansas when I was a church planter out there. But I'm telling you, even at 57, every year I'm like, why is the weather so crazy? And I always have to remind myself, you've lived here your whole life. You should be used to it by now. And that's just kind of the way it is. So that's kind of the world we're living in, trying to figure out what's going to happen over the next few days. So super exciting, super fun. But also I wanted to remind you, to listen as you're listening, to like, to follow, to subscribe, whatever channel you're on. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or iHeartRadio or wherever you're listening, to make sure you like, follow, and subscribe, like I said, so that it gives helps give momentum to the podcast, helps it get in front of other listeners, and that's how we grow. And I'm so grateful for all of you who've already done that. And then also, if you haven't done this, the best way to get involved with us is to go to our website, ageoflions.com, and simply click on any button on there and just get on our list. So you'll get early updates about some things. So for example, the people on that list, they'll get a notification before tomorrow morning, before this releases, to say, hey, we got a top 10 thing going on. Last week when we had Richard Mobley on, he had some resources. He had an ebook specifically for our listeners. He had some other links that we put in the show notes, but our followers got those first. And so they were able to go listen if they wanted to, go listen to his, or go read his release of the article that the whole podcast was kind of built off of, so they could kind of have that ahead of time and know what was going on. So those are the kind of things, kind of the benefits of being on the list and kind of being in the know. And we have some fun things planned for the community as we keep growing. So make sure you do that and get involved. So anyway, let's get into the episode today. I'm super excited to share these top 10 things with you that have been repeating topics throughout the last 35 episodes. I mean, think about 35 episodes. I was thinking about the other day, most of them are around an hour, a little bit over, a little bit under, but it's almost 40 hours of content that has come out of this since we started back in August. And that just kind of blows my mind to think that you could spend 8 hours a day for 5 days in a row listening to all of the different episodes. And I can just tell you, we've been really blown away and amazed by the quality of guests we've had, the level of guests the wisdom, the knowledge, the experience they've brought to the table. So again, if you're new, love for you to go back and kind of revisit that. One of my favorite things is seeing week to week as we see the data, the analytics, the numbers coming in of, listeners and where they are or watchers on YouTube. It's been really fun to see, a certain amount of that is obviously the latest episode that garners, a good bit of listening and watching, obviously, because it's the freshest thing. But we almost have double that in total engagement, really just about every week, meaning that people are coming to the podcast new, they're going back, they're catching up, they're listening to old episodes. And I try to reference things as we interview new people. I'll say, oh yeah, so-and-so a couple months ago said something similar. Here's a quote from somebody else that could add value to what you're saying, and it all kind of builds together. And so it's been fun to watch and see. The numbers don't lie. They tell us people are going back and they're engaging the older content, which is super fun. And hopefully as we keep growing and getting bigger and there's more of the content, that'll just happen more and more and more. And people, I think, are finding it in different ways as they search topics online. So anyway, however you got here, we're really glad that you're here. And we really do want to hear from you as part of this community as we're kind of talking about this process of aging with purpose. So anyway, let's jump into our top 10 list. I'm excited. I hope you're excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. And by the way, these aren't in any particular order. They're not ranked, by most important to least or anything, but these are just 10 things that have really jumped out of the episodes as we've gone through so far over the last 35 episodes that we've done the last 6 months or so. So here we go. Number one is mindset is everything. Mindset is everything. Let's watch this clip real quick from Jeff Moore talking about our friend Wes Stafford.
One of my spiritual mentors and one of my dear close friends is Wes Stafford. Mm-hmm. You've met Wes. He's the president emeritus of Compassion International and has walked a lot with me. And he's a board member of Fellowship Adventures. Mid-70s, we're going to go with. Sure. And, super great shape and just, traveling and crushing it. And he said that he wants his life to be gloriously interrupted. I love that imagery.
That's so cool.
And yeah, man, instead of that sitting around waiting, I would just soon keep going.
And I love that quote. I love that quote from Wes that he basically said, I want to live my life in such a way that I'm getting after it for God, no matter how old I am. I'm hustling, I'm grinding, I'm trying to reach people, I'm trying to spread the gospel, I'm trying to do what God's called me to do, whatever that is for you. And I hope that I'm just doing that with all I've got, and then I'm just gloriously interrupted. And I love, like Jeff said, I love the picture of that, kind of what that implies, that I'm not lying around. I'm not, just waiting for the end to come. I'm doing everything I can as actively as I can for as long as I can. And whenever that ends, it's just going to come to an abrupt interruption, a glorious interruption where God just says, you're done, and takes us out. And that really speaks, I think, to the mindset. Wes is a great example. I don't know Wes super well. We've had some events together. I've got to spend a little bit of time with him. But Wes is just one of those guys who, like Jeff said, is a real model for all of us, a mentor, an example to follow, because he's lived his whole life this way, and he is not slowing down, well into his 70s, like Jeff said, and flying all over the world, speaking and teaching and sharing and helping people and mentoring people. And just what an incredible legacy. And I hope that for myself, I hope that for you, that we get to live our life to the fullest for as long as we possibly can. And, but the idea of God just kind of saying, okay, you've done it all, everything I wanted you to do, and you're done. The old cowboy quote is, dying with your boots on, so to speak. And just meaning that we're dying in action, in the field, getting after it. And this topic came up the first time in one of the very first episodes. It was Richard Mobley. And Richard is an executive coach as well. He's my coach. Coaches my wife. He's kind of an executive coach, really has become almost like a life coach to us. We love Richard, and is just super wise. But in the very first episode, I was asking him, you've talked to and interviewed hundreds and thousands of people over your career as a coach all over the world. A lot of people of all different ages, so definitely people in the older category as well. And I said, what's the biggest challenge that you see among people? What's the biggest issue that they're trying to overcome? And he said, it is hands down, it's mindset. And that really shocked me. I thought it might be something different, but when he said it and started to unpack it and go back and listen to that episode, it's really powerful. It really started to make sense, because it's kind of that as you think, so you do. And I think a lot of the times as we get older, the challenge is to get in that mindset that I'm a negative mindset, or a mindset of lack, where we're basically saying, I'm too old, I'm too tired, I'm not relevant anymore, nobody's interested in what I have to say, or what I bring to the table. And so we start to kind of shrink back. We start to kind of retire, if you will, back, into our shell, so to speak, and isolate ourselves. A lot of older people you'll see are not very social anymore. They're kind of isolated, and they're kind of moving in that wrong direction. And that is all because of their mindset. It's how they perceive things or how they think people perceive them. But Richard is basically saying the mindset needs to be a mindset of abundance, a mindset of positivity, a mindset of that God is providing and has stuff for us, has a plan for us to execute. And so that mindset says, hey, I'm older, therefore I'm wiser, I'm more experienced. I've got that mentality of a sage where I'm trying to pour into people. I'm trying to help younger people. Maybe I'm mentoring people, and I'm living out what I believe God's word tells me is true, and that I have a purpose. God has a plan for me, and I'm going to fulfill that plan. I'm going to fulfill that purpose and do what he's called me on this earth to do, which is not to sit on my couch, not to stay in my recliner, not to be inactive, but to do everything I have, to use what I have to make a difference in the world. And that all starts, as Richard likes to say, in the 6 inches between your ears. And that's where that mindset comes from, is making a decision. I'm going to live this way. And that's a decision, by the way, that you have to make every day. Every day you wake up. You might have to make it multiple times a day as you go through the different processes, because things interrupt us, things discourage us, things are hard. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But you have to choose that mindset that says, no, I'm a child of God. I'm a believer. God has my back. God has a plan for me, and I'm going to get after it. And so that one thing that we've learned, if nothing else, is that mindset really is everything. Okay, number 2, I love this concept. And this concept basically says this. It means that instead of focus on time management, as we get older, we really need to start shifting our focus to energy management. So not time management anymore, but energy management. And that's an important distinction, because it's not that we stop managing our time. Obviously, you've got a calendar and you've got your plans. And, I don't know about you, I live and die by my calendar. Everything is in there. If I didn't have it, I don't know how I would function day to day. We have so much going on between my life and career, my wife's life and career, our families, our kids, grandkids. They live all over the country now, all over the world. We've got one overseas now. It's a constant management of schedules and time zones, and who's where and what's going on and where we're going to be and who's going to get Rivers from school. And every day it's almost like a negotiation of, okay, your calendar, my calendar, how can we make it all fit together? And so that doesn't go away necessarily. That's still there. But our focus more now is more on energy management. And so what that means is longevity requires stamina. And to have stamina, you got to have energy. You've got to have the ability to get stuff done. You've got to be strong. You've got to have strength in that. And so what we found is a consistent theme with people that we've talked to who are just killing it in their 50s and their 60s and their 70s and so forth, is that they are managing their energy really, really well. They know what they're good at. They know what they're not good at. They know what sucks energy or drains energy that's not helpful. They know where they get the most out of the energy that they expend. And so it's a shift in the way we think about it to say, yeah, I got to manage my time, but really I've got to show up well in those moments. And so that requires managing my energy. And so that affects a lot of categories. That includes our health, the way we're eating. I know personally, when I eat well and I'm putting good things in, my energy is different. My mindset is different. My mental state is different. I'm sharper. I'm more focused. Things are less, I get less likely to be distracted. That makes a huge difference. Fitness is a big deal, as you've heard me talk about a lot this last 6-7 months that we've been doing this. I've been on a journey myself of really trying to make some changes. I exercise multiple times a week, very intensely with a group of guys. It's good for my mental state. It's good for my physical state, even when I'm sore, even when I'm stretching myself. And I know I've kind of pushed some muscles I haven't pushed in a while, or whatever that is. The effect of it is positive, because I feel better. I feel like I'm growing. I feel like I'm challenging myself. I know I'm learning I can do hard things physically. That makes a huge difference. And of course, that builds up my stamina, builds up my strength, and endurance, and able to do more things. Sleep is a huge part of that. We've talked about that a lot. Sleep and getting a good night of sleep, and how many hours we need, and all the things. And listen, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. So I don't know what the actual number is supposed to be. I think it's probably different for all of us, depending on who we are and where we are and what we do and how we live our life. There's a kind of an urban myth, legend saying that kind of goes around that says as you get older, you need less sleep. That might be true. I don't know that it is. I say for myself personally and Jendo, the two adults that I know about sleep patterns, we try to get a little bit more. We find, I think, that we're better off when we get good quantity of sleep, and of course, good quality of sleep matters as well. And so it's really a big deal. It really does affect almost everything else in a day on how well you did the night before. So again, just what we do, I can't speak for everybody else, but I know we go to bed a lot earlier than we used to. We work hard. We usually work into the evenings after dinner. We'll have our laptops out, working on, job stuff, podcast stuff, schoolwork for her. She's getting her master's degree. We've always got something that we can be working on. And some nights we watch a show or watch TV or something, but not much. We usually are more into not productivity for the sake of striving, but just there's just a lot to get done, and that's where we put our energy. But there's a point where we shut those things down and we go to bed. We unwind, we relax, maybe read, watch something lighthearted just to kind of get your mind off stuff, and go to bed. And so we found that we're much better off when we do that. And I think that's a big common thing that you're seeing among people who are really productive is they're not burning the candle at both ends in the sense of, working or not getting much sleep. They're taking care of themselves in that way, and it's a big deal. And then the other thing I'd say around this energy management really comes down to discipline. And for me, and I think for a lot of people, that just means there's some things that you got to say no to. And listen, it's hard because most of the things that we have the option to say yes to, they're good things. They're good activities. And we have a lot of people, again, just speaking for us, but pulling on our time, wanting time with us, and we love that. We love having people over the house. We love going out with friends, doing all that. We have a lot of that kind of stuff around our work and travel and all that. It's great. But there are times when you have to go, you know what, we're going to say no to this thing on this day. A lot of times we'll look at a weekend and we'll say, okay, we'll give away Friday night, let's say, or maybe Saturday night, depending on the situation. But on Sunday, we're not, to the church and stuff, we're not going anywhere. We're not doing anything that's not kind of life-giving to us. And that might mean good things like we might do. We might spend time with the kids or do something fun, go to the park or, whatever. That's fine. I'm not saying we stay in the house all day, but I'm just making the point that we are trying to do things that feed us, help us rest, rejuvenate us, basically live out the Sabbath principle where we're really resting and pouring so that we can be better going into the next week. And so that discipline of saying no to certain things is hard. I'm not saying we get it right all the time. We certainly don't. Sometimes you just have to say yes. There's things that just need to get done. But wherever it's possible, we try to really manage that well so that we can be our best for all the other people who need us, each other as a married couple, our kids, or the people we work with, the students that Jenda gets to lead at Highlands College, et cetera, et cetera. It just kind of keeps rippling out. So health, fitness, sleep, discipline, the way we eat, all that really does matter when we're trying to manage our energy. And I will just say in summary of this, that energy really does become the real currency of leadership. You can't be a good leader. You can't be an influencer. And I don't mean that in the modern social way. I just mean influencing and leading people, helping people. You can't do that well, even your own family, your own marriage, if you don't take care of yourself and manage your energy well. As we get older, that is super important. Okay, let's move on. Number 3. And I love this one. And it's just a little saying. I don't think this is original to us. I really don't know where it kind of popped up or came up. But the saying is basically this. Number 3, aging isn't for sissies. And I love that saying because it says, hey, if you're going to age well, you got to get it together and get after it and get tough because it's a hard road to hoe. Let's listen to this clip real quick from William Vanderbloemen, one of our very first guests. He has a great quote. Let's get into this real quick.
What I'm seeing the best do that I want to try and mirror is constantly stretch, because time will atrophy your ability to stretch mentally, emotionally, relationally, and physically. And I'm just kind of fascinated with the idea of not chasing the latest thing, but okay, how do I stretch a little bit? How am I going to fight the calcification that comes with time?
I love that section from him. I love that statement by William talking about stretching in all areas of our life, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally, staying limber, staying flexible, because we have to fight that calcification of time. When we don't take care of ourselves in that way, it's going to get tough. And so that speaks to the fact that we have to really be, mindset again, energy management, it all kind of feeds together. That to age well, you got to be tough, because the reality is, as any of us know, there's a certain point, and we've joked about it a ton and laughed about it and talked about it seriously as well on the show with many different guests, that the second half of life comes with some real challenges. And these are myriad, and I'm not going to be able to list all of them, but some of the categories are, at a minimum, we all have some health changes. And I'm not saying we're all unhealthy by any stretch, but we talk about getting up in the morning and there's those aches and pains, and you're like, what did I do in the middle of the night that has made my knee hurt or made my foot sore, whatever the thing is, my back hurts. As we get older, it's a real thing, and you got to get up and stretch it out and, work it out. And so that's a real thing. There's also a lot of challenges that come, with careers. Sometimes they're by choice, sometimes they're not. The whole world is changing right now with AI and stuff. And so that's probably affected some of you, or maybe it's going to, I don't know what's going to happen there, but there's always something happening. And so careers change, jobs end, new skills have to be learned. As we get older, that does get harder. We talked about this a couple times just personally. I've shared that when I started my newest company, now about a year and a half ago, it was a big decision to make. I knew I could do it. I knew I had the skills to do it. I knew I was good at it. I'd done it before. I'd had multiple businesses over the years, and I loved doing that. But I also knew to start something new from scratch and kind of build it back up was going to take a certain level of energy, a certain level of grinding that it was going to take. And I just kind of had to grit my teeth and just go, okay, here we go, and get after it. And I knew it was going to be hard, but it's been absolutely worth it. But that's a real thing that we have to deal with. And so, to do that well as we get older, it takes a lot. It takes more effort sometimes, even though we're trying to work smarter and not harder. We've learned some things, but it still takes a lot of work. Another thing that affects this, I think, is that as we get older, we're going to experience loss. There's loss in life that's hard to process, hard to deal with. It could be, people immediately around us. It could be our parents. It could be a spouse. Those kind of things happen, or even adult children sometimes. And there's terrible losses that happen. And there's things that are part of life, like the fact that kids graduate, they go to college, they move away, they get careers, they get married. They might live in a different city or different state, or in our case, a different country. And that, while it's exciting and you want that for them and you are proud of them, it's a loss in a way, because it's a new season. One thing's ending, dying, so to speak, a new thing's being born. And so those things can be really hard on us. Again, we talked about career and jobs. We can lose friends, they can pass away, they can move away. Things happen like that. And so there's loss there. And then there's more of the soul things, like sometimes we feel like maybe we've lost our purpose, or we've lost our calling, or we're not really sure what we're supposed to be doing as we get older, which is one of the whole points of this whole conversation. And the podcast that we're doing is to help people reestablish and find that purpose that God has for them. And so those are things that we can lose, kind of that sense of direction, sense of purpose, sense of calling. And so that is a loss. And then a lot of times the challenge of identity can really be hard as well. Trying to figure out, who we are. And sometimes we get really tied to a job that we've had, and that has changed. So our identity is in question, or maybe it's our relationships, maybe it's a spouse or something, and your whole life was kind of your family and your marriage, and now that's changed. Maybe someone has passed away, or something tragic has happened, and there's been a change, and so that can affect that identity. And all of a sudden, we kind of find ourselves asking, who am I? Who am I really? I was kind of tied to these other things. They're now gone. Who am I now that all of the other things have been stripped away? And so to process all of that takes a sense of grit. It takes courage. It takes resilience. It takes, again, a strong mindset. And to thrive in this season, when things change this much and you have loss, and your body's not what it used to be, and all the things that we have to overcome to stay strong, stay relevant, stay active, it's not for the weak of heart. And to age well, you can't be a sissy about it. You got to be strong. You got to be determined. You got to have a strong will. and you got to get after it. And I'm telling you right now, I'm thinking about making some merch, so t-shirts or sweatshirts or something that on the back says "Aging's not for sissies." And I think we can sell 1 million copies of it, because I think all of us know that's true. It's kind of a fun way to look at it, lighthearted way, but it says, hey, we're going to do this well. We're going to get after it. We can't be weak. We got to be strong. I love that one. Okay, let's move on. So we've had mindset is everything was number 1. Number 2 was energy management, more important than time management. Number 3, aging's not for sissies. Number 4, and we're going to unpack this, so don't freak out if you're on the other side of this, but a common theme that's been kind of talked about really by almost every guest is sort of that retirement is a dirty word. Let's hear this quick clip from Chris Bruno.
As we age, we have a choice. Do we want to become an elder, or are we just going to become elderly? Okay. And so one of them requires intention. One is bereft of intention. You don't have to do anything to become elderly. It's just going to happen. Okay. It's just going to happen. But it takes a lot of thoughtful intention to become an elder. The elder is the one who brings the presence. And that's one massive thing that I think is significant in our world of retirement age, is that retirement brings us into spaces of absence, not presence. And so I think we need to reintegrate in society as bringing our presence. So the elder is somebody who's vitally important to the containment of the society, the containment of the community.
I love that clip from him. And that was a real, we've kind of known, most everybody we talked to has said, hey, I'm not really interested in retiring. That's not even something I find in scripture. God's not calling me to that. He's got more for me to do. And that's been a very common theme, but I never thought about it in the way that Chris talks about it, where it's basically withdrawing into absence, versus kind of leaning in and being present. And so really great quote from him. The traditional script, especially in America, especially in the West, says, work, build success, have a career, all the things, make a lot of money, retire, and then relax. But I think as lions, as we look at ourselves as lions, we reject that model. And now no longer is the goal retirement. But I think the goal for us is redeployment or redistribution of our skill sets, or redefining who we are and what we're all about. It's a different, again, go back to number 1, a different mindset to say that my goal is not to shrink back and play golf every day. In fact, everybody we've talked to that has said they've even tried that has basically said, hey, it got old really, really fast. I felt useless. I wasn't productive. I felt like I didn't have a sense of purpose. And so I want to be real clear. When I say, when we say retirement's a dirty word, and that's kind of a funny way to say it. Look, if you're retired from your job, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. We're not talking about that. What we're talking about is how you're using your time, and basically the mindset of retiring, which is usually to say, I'm not going to do anything else except whatever I want to do, and I'm just going to kind of fade off into the distance. That's what we're rejecting. If you've retired from a job and a career and all that, hey, congratulations. Now the challenge is, what are you going to do with your life in this season? And retirement as a definition, as a word, just doesn't really apply like it might in the secular world. As a believer, as a kingdom person, we're looking at this time as an opportunity to do something great for God, something great for the kingdom, using all that he's given us. So we're not retiring and shrinking back, but we're leaning in and we're growing. So that's what we mean. So don't take offense if you are, quote unquote, retired. It's not about that and your work. It's about what you're doing with your life now that you've got that freedom. And so I think it's a challenge to all of us to go, hey, I'm not done. There's more that God has for me to do. Okay, let's move on. Number 5, you can't coast in the second half. And I kind of wrote this down before, and it's kind of cheesy. I don't know if y'all gonna laugh at me, but there's from that movie League of Their Own, the baseball movie about the women baseball players. There's that famous line from Tom Hanks that says there's no crying in baseball. Well, I think the line for us is there's no coasting in the second half of life, because the bottom line is the only place you can coast is downhill. And so let's watch this clip real quick from Sean Lovejoy. Really powerful. Check it out.
Most common command in the Bible is do not be afraid. 300 or 400 times, depending on translation. Do not be afraid. Do not be terrified. Do not be dismayed. Do not be discouraged. Have courage, all that. And then Paul said, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, sound mind. So if God is not the author of fear, if fear doesn't come from God, where does fear come from?
Yeah.
100% from the enemy.
Yeah.
So he wants to steal, kill, and destroy your purpose, your confidence, and take in new ground by leaving you in the land of the familiar. It's what he did to the Israelites. It's one of the oldest strategies in the game. Courage and boldness, it's not a feeling. It shouldn't be. It's a spiritual decision. I am not going back. I am not turning around. I am not clinging to what's comfortable. I will not make this my identity.
I love what Sean says there about, the temptation to stay in comfort, to stay with what's familiar. He's saying, hey, I got to leave that stuff behind. I can't coast in that. I can't live on what I did before. And there's no turning back. I'm going to burn the ships and I'm going to go this way. And that's a hard thing to do as we get older. It's so tempting to rest on our laurels. It's so tempting to say, hey, I've done enough. I've got enough. I don't need any more, money. I don't need any more this or that or whatever the things are. And so we start to coast or drift. And again, the only place you can coast is downhill. You can't coast uphill. You can't coast into a goal. You can't coast into growth. Those things just don't work that way. And our culture is basically telling us, if you look at all the outlying stuff, all the commercials from all the financial companies and so forth, they're basically saying, hey, the goal is to slow down and quote unquote enjoy life. And I'm just telling you right now that doing nothing is not enjoyable. And again, we've talked about this endlessly. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. But the bottom line is that lack of purpose, that lack of calling, that lack of sense of I'm contributing and doing something is deadly. And it really does take us downhill. It takes us the wrong way. And so the people that we're finding who are thriving really well in the second half of life, and these are the kind of guests that we're having on. And I mean, I'm telling you, I'm blown away by the people who've come on and what the stories that they're telling. It's been really incredible. But what they all have in common is they're leaning in harder. They're working more. I don't mean working in the sense of more hours in the week, but they're getting after it, whatever it is that God's called them to do. They're not slowing down. They're doing more, not less. And so I think that's a really powerful lesson for all of us to grab onto. And listen, I'm not saying that there's not seasons of rest. I'm not saying there's not times when we need to do that. Just a few weeks ago, we had guest Rusty Hicks on, and Rusty was talking about how he's left one career that he had for many, many years, super successful at it, quote unquote, retired very soon after. I think it was weeks. He wasn't even barely into that. God said, hey, I want you to lead this ministry. They hire him to be their president, to give them vision, take it to a new place. He does that for a few years. And then now that season's come to a close, and Rusty's in his 60s, and he's basically like, okay, I feel like God's telling me to rest right now for a season unto whatever is next. And so he's basically saying it's okay to rest, to enjoy some quiet time, to not be working all the time or pursuing a goal right this second, because I know that's coming and God's getting me ready for that. So he's in the Word. He talked about being in the Word, talked about his prayer and worship time, talked about taking care of himself physically, getting the much needed rest so that he's ready for that next assignment, which is inevitable. It's just a matter of when it comes. And in his case, I know Rusty really well. I'm super excited for what God has next for him, but that applies to all of us. So there's a time for that. There's a time to rest or coast a little bit for a short term, but this is not a lifestyle choice. It's only if God's calling you to do it in a short season. Okay, let's move on to number 6. And number 6 is what I'm calling the power of purpose. The power of purpose. Let's listen to this clip from Gina Cox.
The National Institute on Aging had actually come alongside, some of Dan Bittner's research, and they report that having a purpose adds approximately 7 years to your life.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
How
big.
about that? Isn't that big? And
Yeah.
then there was another one like that. Oh, being in a multi-generational faith-based family can add 4 to 14 years to your life.
Wow.
I know. This is
That's so
National
good.
Institutes on Aging.
Isn't that amazing that those studies are showing that having a sense of purpose adds 7 years to your life? That's amazing. And that just speaks to what we already kind of know intuitively, know as believers, know from what God's word is telling us about purpose. But now the science is basically saying, no, if you've got something you're living for and working for and trying to help people and serve, and you've got purpose in your life, then that could add 7 years to your life. And that just shows how much it affects us physically, emotionally, mentally. And that's a powerful, powerful thing. And the truth is, when people know their calling, they know their purpose, they know what they're about, they can endure almost anything. Like we said, mindset's important. We've said aging's not for sissies. When you know what your thing is, your purpose, your why, you can endure almost any kind of change, any kind of loss, because even though it might rock you a little bit or have a hard season around it, and that's all fine, that's part of life, that sense of purpose and calling is what kind of brings us back. Rusty Hicks said it last week. He said, purpose is your anchor. And in Christ, that's true as far as like how we're living our life. It really does affect us in a powerful, powerful way. So when things happen to us, a career change, the general challenges of aging, we have other kinds of setbacks or uncertainty or whatever's going on, knowing we have that purpose is what really keeps us going. One of my favorite verses in Scripture is Ephesians 2:10. And it says, for we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, not to sit on the couch, by the way, to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. And whenever I talk about that verse with groups, when I'm in front of them, I love to tell them, hey, God didn't make you and then go, okay, I got to figure out something for this person to do. That's not how that works. This verse is telling us the purpose was planned before you were. He already had things he needed to get done. He had purpose. He had assignments that needed to be fulfilled. And then he created you to fulfill one of those purposes or maybe multiple purposes. And so he prepared that in advance for us. Then he made us to go do it. And so that's how big purpose is in your life. That's why it matters so much. That's why you need to really latch onto it. And the truth is, without purpose, people tend to drift. They tend to coast, like we just talked about. They tend to be, kind of rudderless, like, we talk about a ship. They just don't have any direction in their life. Purpose really adds that. It helps us stay steady. It helps us move in the right direction. And like Rusty said, that calling really does become the anchor in that second half of life. And so I want to say this while we're on this topic real quick. We haven't really unpacked this topic solely, like we haven't had a whole episode just about this, but I'm sure sometimes people are listening to this and going, hey, this all is great, sounds great, I believe it. I just don't know what my thing is. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what my calling is, or what you might hear some people say their why. I don't know what my why is. And so we might do some more on this later. In my coaching process, we actually do a lot of talking about this, but let me give you just a couple of little hints that might help you start to pursue that. And by the way, if you're in that boat and you're trying to figure that out and you don't really know what to do or how to go about it, reach out, comment, DM me, email me, get on the mailing list, and then reach out to me. Like, let me know, because we've got tools we can put in front of you. We've got people we can connect you with. I'd love to help you, whatever we can do to get you moving, because I believe with all my heart that helping people find that purpose and then pursue what God's given them to do inside of that really is the key to life, the key to success, the key to fulfillment as a believer. I could go on and on about it for hours, but I'll just leave it at that. So let me give you a couple of little hints. And again, sometimes people call this their why. And I love to help people think about what their why statement is. So let me just give you mine just as an example. And I put a lot of work into kind of figuring this out over time, and I'll unpack that real quick for you. But my personal why is this. You'll see it on my Instagram, or a lot of my bio stuff on different socials will say this. My why is I help kingdom-minded leaders launch their God-given dreams into reality. That's it. That's my why. That's what fires me up. That's what gets me excited. I love to help kingdom-minded people like you figure out their why and then launch their God-given dreams into reality. I like to see them go from where they are to this dream that God's given them, this calling, this purpose God's put in their life, seeing that come to reality. And that's been my why for years and years, even before I really understood how to define it. And so that was true in all my businesses before. It was true when I was a pastor. I love that life change. I love people figuring out what God wanted them to do and get after it. And those moments are just everything to me. Like I can't get enough of seeing people baptized and coming and kind of stepping into that public phase of their Christian life. Go, okay, what do you have for me next? I love to see it in business people. I did it all through that. And then I got into coaching and started to coach people one-on-one and in groups. And the whole thing was helping people launch their dreams, whatever that was, a business, a ministry, write a book, start a project, start a nonprofit, whatever the thing was, just helping people get that done. That's my thing. I love doing that. When I went to work at Highlands College for those 3 years and I got the privilege of serving with their Leadership Institute and leading that. That was the same thing as my coaching, just at scale. I got to do it with hundreds and hundreds of people at a time versus 10 or 20 or 30 at a time. And so whatever I do, my why is part of that. That's why that job was a good fit for me for that season. And then now I've left that, started my new company, same thing. I'm helping clients, helping nonprofits, helping churches, helping individuals, helping coaches figure out their why, get it out there on a website and in videos. And we do all that creative stuff too. That's super fun. But the bottom line is we're helping them figure out how to get their thing to the next level. It's what I do. And then this podcast is another great example of that. So I'm just giving you that stuff to say that your why fuels everything that you do. It should fuel everything that you do. And that's the difference between doing things that you don't enjoy and you're not great at and you don't feel very fulfilled in it. But when it's your why and you can connect that to your work, to your personal life, to your hobbies, to your passion projects, whatever you're doing, wherever you're serving, that's the game changer. That's why I love doing this, because it fulfills my why, my calling, my purpose. And so couple of ways you can figure that out. I love to tell people one way to figure out your why is what makes you cry. And all I mean by that is the thing that when you see it and it moves you to tears, that emotion wells up in you and you're just moved by that thing, whatever it is. That's a good hint as to your why. Your why is probably connected to that somewhere because you really care about that and it moves you deeply in your soul. Another little hint is, I tell people your why, whatever makes you angry is probably a hint about your why. So things that you see that you feel like are injustice or not fair, not right. I don't like how that's going. I get frustrated about this process. I wish this organization did this differently or this happened a different way. It gets you fired up. It gets you maybe angry or irritated. That's a good indicator that your why is maybe tied to that because you care deeply. Those emotions of either anger and frustration or crying or getting moved in your heart. That's a good example. So for me, those things would be like this. Like for years and years, I would think, why am I so moved when I see somebody get baptized? Like even people I don't even know who they are. But I hear a little bit of their story. I see them get baptized, and I cry every time because it marks life change. It marks transition. It marks them growing in their purpose, and that's a reason that gets to me. I love. I'm really moved by that when I hear people share a testimony of how God has moved in their life. I had a privilege just yesterday. I was filming with one of my clients, and I had a connection to one of the guys that we were interviewing. We were kind of catching up, and he was sharing some stuff with me about how God had used something to really change his life in a positive way that I was actually part of in a small, small way. I was just about to cry sitting there talking to him because I was so moved by how he went from this place to this place and now he's fulfilled and he has purpose and he's excited about his future. And that's the kind of thing that fires me up. And so that might be clues for you too as to what your purpose is, what God's leading you to, what your why is. So again, hopefully you already got that figured out and you're moving on into that. And that's why you're loving all this and you're learning about stuff. But if you want that and you don't have it, again, please reach out and let us know. And let's talk about how we can help you figure that out because it is life-changing once you do. Okay, moving on. Number 7. Didn't have a great title for this one, but basically what we came up with is the first half of life prepares you, the second half deploys you. Let's watch this quick clip from F3 President Frank Schwartz.
You spend those first few decades climbing the mountain, and then you hit this point and you think it's the summit. Right. Until you get over the edge of it, and then you're like, oh, crap. Who knew? There was more. There's another mountain.
I gotta go down.
There's another summit. Right. Any number of things.
Yeah.
But unfortunately,
that's good.
When you get there, there's this beautiful meadow. And it is and it's sunny and it's perfect. It's so good there. And a lot of guys go, you know what? I'm camping. I'm done. And God has no intention of you camping. Because now what I'm going to call you to do is to create with me, right? I am the creator of heaven and earth, right? And all things that in them are. So I'm going to say now, this is your opportunity. You and I, you completed those tasks. I know I can trust you, right? If you did those things well. So now I'm going to I'm going to put you in and say, okay, are you ready to create the second half?
I love how Frank talks about this, because he's basically saying, hey, there's a reason all this stuff has happened to you in the first half of life. Now God's calling you to partner with him to do something new in this second half of life. And again, bottom line of what this whole thing is about, why we're doing this, why we're having these conversations, why we're interviewing all these people, because they're all modeling this. And I hope that you're learning these things from them. And Frank said it really well. So to put it briefly, the early years in your life, the first half of life, it builds experience. Hopefully it's building wisdom into you. You're building relationships, marriage, family, friends, church. Hopefully your network, your professional network is growing. You've got relationships there, and you're getting credibility because you're learning how to be good at whatever it is you do. Hopefully you have competence in it. You're really good at it. So you get credibility. People trust you in that world. All that stuff is great. But as great as that is, and even with tremendous success in the first half of life, wonderful. Okay. But the second half is when those things finally can really start to compound, to multiply into what we would call real, true influence. Whatever you've done in that first half, there's so much more that God has for you. And whether that's a little that you did in the first half or a lot, wherever you are in the journey, God has more, because he's so much bigger than what we do, what we're capable of, what we think, our gifts are. And the reality is that many people do the most meaningful work of their life after 50. And, that could be for a lot of reasons. And I don't pretend to be the expert to know why all that is. But I think a lot of it comes down to sometimes it just takes that long to figure out what you're really great at. It takes that long to figure out, where your passion is, what your why is, like we just talked about, what your purpose is. And so sometimes it's trial and error, and you've done some things that I was okay at that, but not great. Didn't really love it. So let's put that aside. Let's try something else. And by the time you get into your 50s or above, you've probably done a lot of that work and figured a lot of that out. And so now hey, I know this is the lane or lanes I need to be in. This is where I thrive. This is where I come alive. This is where I'm the most excited. It's what I'm good at. It's what I enjoy. It's what makes me passionate. So that, I think, after learning all that in the first half, that second half really does set you up to do well. And this is just an idea I've played with. I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm not going to do it right now, but I love collecting stories of people kind of 50 plus who are just doing great things. And obviously a lot of our guests are those people. We're learning a lot from them. But I could even imagine just a book that just say, hey, you're over 50, read this book, because here's 50 stories of people who are killing it after 50. And I just love that kind of stuff. I love hearing about that. So just something fun to think about. But first half prepares you, second half deploys you. So think about that. Okay, number 8. I love this one. Grandparenting is a strategic role. And I love that because the people that we've talked to, and we haven't had a whole episode on grandparenting, but it's come up a lot because this is the age that we are. A lot of people that we've talked to are grandparents or about to be grandparents. And as I've shared with you guys, and I'll say it one more time, in fact, this is one of the benefits of video versus audio. I'm going to put a picture in the video side of my new grandson, Luke, who was born January 31st, 2026. And he's amazing, and I love him. And he was born a little bit early, about 5 weeks early. Got to come home just a week ago, I guess now, last weekend, right after his actual due date passed. About 2 days later, he got to come home. And so he's great. Mom and dad are doing great. But grandparenting is a big deal amongst the people that we're talking to. It's not babysitting. It's not an afterthought. The people we've talked to have been very strategic about the importance, the legacy, the generational aspects of what grandchildren mean. And I think that's really highlighted because of the fact that we're believers, the fact that we are thinking kingdom minded, we're thinking eternity. And we see that whole role very differently than maybe people who don't have that. And so it's a real opportunity as a grandparent to bless your family, bless the grandkids, bless their parents, pour into them. It's an opportunity to disciple that we maybe didn't get quite right with our kids. I know that's something I hate. I wish I'd have done better at that. But a lot of people see grandkids as an opportunity, as a second chance. It's time. Maybe I'll do it better this time. Less pressure. Maybe I'm not working so much, or just trying to make a living or survive, or whatever your thing was. And that's all fine. That's part of life. But they look at that opportunity with the grandkids and go, hey, I'm going to do much, much better this time. I'm going to pour into them. I'm going to lead in a different way. And so it's a really cool opportunity to disciple your family and lead that way. You get to be an encourager. You get to be that sounding board, hopefully, for your grandkids. You get to be close to them. It's a privileged role. It's harder to be the parent than the grandparent. For any of us who've been parents, that's hard. You're in the trenches with them day to day. You're the disciplinarian, all that stuff. But a lot of times grandparents talk about, hey, I don't have to do that. I get to be the fun part of the family. I get all the fun, the good parts without all the bad parts, or without all responsibility. So you get to do a lot of encouraging. And again, kind of tied to discipleship, you really have a chance now to model faith, model your beliefs, model what God's kingdom is to your family in a different way than maybe you did before. And I love that for a lot of these people that we've interviewed, they're looking at grandparenting as multi-generational leadership. They're thinking about the legacy that they're leaving in people in their family. They're thinking about, a lot of times we hear the words generational curses, when hard things in our family get kind of passed down. But we don't talk enough, I don't think, about generational blessings. And so we have an opportunity as grandparents to interrupt those things, maybe break a curse off of our family, if that's the thing for you, something that you're dealing with, something that's been passed down. We have an opportunity to spiritually step into that, intercede, intervene, break that curse, and now turn that away and now say, we're going to have generational blessings in our family, and we're going to pass those down. And so that's all these things that are, the reason it's so powerful is there's an intentionality that our guests have talked about over and over again about how they're leaning into grandkids and even their own grown children that are having the grandchildren, how that all works together. And so there's been a couple of little tidbits that I've picked up that maybe you have too. One is a lot of our grandparents have talked about how their health, while it's important for all the things that we've talked about today, it's also important because they want to be able to be active with their grandchildren. I remember Sophie Corder saying, I want to be able to get on the floor with my grandkids and be able to get back up again, and as we're getting older, we know that can be challenging sometimes. So she wants to be in the best shape she can, to be healthy, active, engage with her grandkids, play with them, take them out and do stuff, have fun with them. And we've heard that over and over again from many of our guests. So that's a big part of it. And that's been a real inspiration for me too. I want to be much more available to my grandkids physically, to be able to do stuff with them. I think, I have dreams even now about my grandson and what I might get to do with him as he gets older. And I can throw him in the truck and we can go out in the woods, maybe go camping. I have all these ideas. So I can't do that if I'm not healthy. I can't do that if I can't walk a long way. I can't do that if I'm out of shape. And so it's a motivator for sure. Another thing, and this is probably my favorite thing that I've learned about grandparenting so far as a brand newbie, is Jim Shepard, one of our guests, came on and he was talking about his family. And we this wasn't the focus of our talk, but we had a segment that was kind of on this topic. And he got this from somebody else, but he was sharing it. And now I've taken it. Maybe some of you guys have done this too. The idea was to take a Bible, and as you're going through, if you do like a yearly daily Bible reading where you go through the Bible in a year, get a Bible specifically for a grandkid and make notes in the margins around the passages that you're reading for the grandchild, speaking to them, writing their name. Hey, in my case, Luke, when I read this, I think about da-da-da, and save that for when they're a little bit older, maybe 15 or 16 or whatever's appropriate for you, and give that to them as a gift. What an incredible gift to give a grandchild. Here's something I did for you. So I took that to heart, and I just was going to show you guys, because I just love doing this. If you're watching on video, if you're listening on audio, I'm holding up my Bible. If you're watching, you see it. This is just a sample. This is from Matthew over the last few weeks. I don't even remember what the date on this was, January 7th. But just a good example of taking some markers, highlighting some passages, writing some notes in the margins, tying all that together. And as I'm going through this year, like this Bible, almost every page is going to be filled with this kind of stuff from me to him. And I also have a journal. In fact, that's it behind me on the dresser. It's just a little moleskin journal. So any extra things I want to write to him, like I've written to him about his name. I've written to him about the day he was born. I've written to him about the day we brought him home, and what that meant to me for him, and prayers that I have for him, things that are too long to put, in the margins of the Bible. So again, just a great little tidbit. I've never heard that in my whole life. Getting to talk to someone awesome like Jim Shepard, and he goes, "Hey, here's something I do for my grandkids." Boom, I took it. I was like, I'm doing. The second he said it, in fact, I might have even said that in the interview. I was like, I'm doing that. And I've shared this with some other people just offline as I've talked to other people about, as a grandparent, I talk about my grandkid a lot. And so I've shared this idea with them, and they're always like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool. That's so like, I want to do that for my kids." So, my thought has been, I'm going to do this for him. If there's more to come, I'll do it for them. It's just a really cool legacy thing we can do as a believer to pass the word down to our grandkids with some personal stuff from us to them in that. So anyway, just one of the takeaways I've had. Okay, let's move on. Number 9, relationships are the real scorecard. Relationships are the real scorecard. And this has been highlighted over and over again. It's been really interesting to think about it. Again, like Frank Schwartz talked about with first half, learning, and second half deploying. Earlier in life, success often means to us, or we define success, with our work, our promotions, our money, where we live, achievements, all that. That's fine. That's just part of life, and those are all fine things. But I believe we're finding as we get later in life, second half of life, a little bit older, that we start to care a lot less about those kind of things, and we start to care a lot more about relationships. And that includes our marriages. It includes our children, our grandchildren, as we just talked about, our friendships, the circle of friends you have. I think all of us, as we get older, start to appreciate the friends we have, because, and I don't have a stat on this, but there's some thing out there, if you have 3 great friends in your whole life, or 6, or whatever the number is, that you're doing incredibly well. And I think, as you get older, you start to see, I've got some good friends. I don't have 100 of them. I might have 5 or 10 or whatever the number is, but you really start to value those people that you've done life with. I remember when we interviewed Ren Aaron, one of the first 5 or 10 episodes, and he was talking about this group of guys that he's been with since childhood, and they get together a couple of times a year. They do vacations together. They do retreats together. The men, their wives are all friends, even though they live all over the country, and they've had celebrated all the things together, births and deaths, and I think one of them has passed away already, and but they've just done life together. He values that so much, and we all should really do that. And as we get older, I think we begin to really appreciate the people that we can count on, the people who know us, really know us, people who've been through life with us and seen the good and the bad and the ugly and all the stuff that goes with it. And so relationships really do start to matter in a very different way. And so I just want to challenge all of us, myself included, to be more intentional as we get older, to invest in the people around us, to send the note, to make the phone call, to send a text when we feel prompted by the Holy Spirit to reach out to somebody, maybe somebody you're mentoring or whatever, but really start to value those relationships, because that really is the scorecard. And again, cheesy or cliche, whatever you want to call it, but that whole thing about at your funeral, end of life, and no one's as you're dying on your deathbed, no one cares. You don't care about work. You don't care about possessions. It's about who's with you. It's about your people. And so let's really come together to think about that as we keep growing and aging with purpose. Okay, so let me repeat this real quick. We've had 9 great things. Number 1, mindset is everything. Number 2, energy management more important than time management. Number 3, aging's not for sissies. Number 4, retirement is a dirty word. Number 5, you don't coast in the second half. Number 6, the power of purpose. Number 7 was the first half prepares you, the second half deploys you. Number 8, grandparenting is a strategic role. Number 9, that we just went through, relationships become the real scorecard. And then number 10, and I just thought this was really a powerful way to kind of end this conversation today, this podcast, is that your story, your testimony is your greatest asset. Your story, your testimony, what God's done in your life, what he's doing in your life, that is your greatest asset. Let's watch this quick clip from my wife, Jenda.
The power of the story, the power of the testimony is that it creates hope, and the ability to bravely share your story. If you are, for example, like me, looking in that rearview mirror, looking at things that I wish had been different, either things that I could have done differently or things that maybe could have never been done to me. When you're willing to actually go there, and God's invitation is, hey, will you actually tell what I've done? Hope is created. And people, when we are willing, each of us, to tell our story and not tell it in a way with excuses or blame, but to actually own the story that's happened here and also what God's been up to, other people start to believe too that, hey, more is possible, more is available. If it can happen for you, it can happen for me. And I've just seen it time and time again be endlessly powerful.
You know, for a lot of obvious reasons, that was one of my favorite episodes. I loved having that conversation with Jenda, talking about story, talking about the power of story. And as she said there, one of the great things about story and testimony is that it brings hope. It gives people hope because they realize, hey, whatever they're going through, you've gone through some stuff, other people have gone through stuff when they go hear their stories, and they've come out the other side, and God has been faithful, and God has showed up. And like we say in that interview, he's undefeated. He's batting 1,000, never fails. And that story becomes really inspiring for people. It becomes hopeful for them and really shows them that things can turn around and get better. And so that's a powerful episode. I want you to go back and watch that if you haven't seen it already. But those mistakes that we make, the failures that we have, the hard seasons of life, they really do become tools for helping other people. And they really do give them hope. And you know, what once might have felt like a scar, it might have felt ugly to you. It actually is something beautiful that is wisdom that you can pass down. Lessons you've learned the hard way. You know, we think about emotional scars and things like that. There's lessons there, and those scars really can become beautiful because they represent us overcoming, they represent us changing, they represent us growing, healing, getting better, becoming whole, all that stuff. And so your story can become a great resource for others around you, for the next generation, for your grandkids, etc. And I was thinking about this the other day because I was having a meeting with a guy, a new friend, just an acquaintance that some people had connected us. And he leads this really awesome small group of these really high-level leaders at his church. And these are business owners and CEOs and presidents of companies and doctors and lawyers, and they're high-level people. They've done really well. They're really smart. They're leading their own companies. But we were talking about the fact that one thing they've kind of struggled with is trying to get these guys to go out and do other men's groups, kind of like their group. And how a lot of them are kind of afraid or fearful or not sure they can get up and really lead other men when it comes to the Bible, when it comes to Christianity, when it comes to being a Christ follower. And I asked him, I said, why is that? I said, these are type A leadership guys. They lead companies. Some of them have thousands of employees. They're leaders. So what is it about leading in the Christian context or leading in church or small group Bible stuff? What's the holdup? And he thought about it for a second. And he said, a lot of them, he said, I think they have shame around their past. Maybe they weren't always a very strong believer. Maybe they made some mistakes. Maybe they did some things they regret. And it's just so much like the enemy. And Jen and I talk about this in that episode to try to dissuade us, because Revelation 12:11, as we talk about there, it says that you will overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb, Jesus, salvation, and the power of your testimony, the power of your story. And the enemy knows that. And he wants to use that against us. So he's on the shoulder, the devil and the angel, so to speak, and he's in there going, hey, you don't have any business talking about this. You can't talk about Jesus. You're a hypocrite. They know you failed. They know you didn't have a successful life early on. They know you did things you shouldn't have done, whatever the stuff is. And he wants to remind us of our past. He wants to remind us of where we failed. And there's an old church saying, again, this is the third thing I've said today that I'll qualify with. It might be a little bit corny, but there's an old preacher saying that says, if the devil tries to remind you of your past, you need to remind him of his future. And basically saying, hey, he's already done. He's defeated. He is fighting from a losing position. He's just trying to drag everybody down that he can because he knows he's going down. But there is a lot of truth in that. And he's trying to shame us, embarrass us, get us to be quiet, get us to be alone. And that's why he doesn't want you telling your story. And I'm here to tell you, and Jen and I do a whole hour on this. Go back and listen to it. that your story, like Revelation 12:11 tells you, is one of the most powerful things in your arsenal that actually has the power to overcome the enemy and all the things he's trying to do. And so if he's telling you not to use your story, not to share it, not to tell it, I'm telling you right now, that's because he knows how powerful it is, and he knows he can't stand up to it. So the next time you have doubts about your story, the doubts about your testimony, he's trying to tell you can't do it, you're not good enough, whatever, you go to the Word, go to Revelation 12:11, read that verse. You have the power to overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb, Jesus, and the power of your testimony, your story. Don't let him tell you any different. Don't be afraid to step up. Share that story and see what happens. Go back and listen to Jen and I talk about it. There's a whole hour just on that topic, and we give you a lot of things to kind of hold on to there and lessons to learn about that we've learned. That no matter how hard the story is, no matter what's happened to you or what you've done to other people or whatever the thing is, God can and will use that to point people to him, to talk about redemption, talk about salvation, talk about healing and being whole and being made into the image of Christ, which you are as a son or daughter of the Most High King. I'm getting fired up. Don't let him dissuade you. Don't let him win that. You have the power. You have the victory. Your story matters, and it will defeat him in the kingdom. So don't forget that. Don't forget how important your story is. And the reason this matters so much is the older we get and the story gets longer and richer and we have more victories with Christ and we see him do more things in our life and in the kingdom, that's how it becomes your greatest asset. Scripture says it's your greatest asset day one. The second you give your life to Christ, your story is a powerful tool, but it only gets stronger. It only gets greater. The older you are, the more experience you have, the longer and richer that story becomes, that you can point to Jesus over and over and say, he helped me here. He saved me here. He made me whole. He healed me of my past. He gave me the courage to share this story with you. He's winning. He's won. It's over. It's finished. It's done. And that's why your story is so powerful. So, hey, I hope today's been great, giving you these top 10 things. But again, these are things that have come up over and over and over again in these different interviews. So go back and check them out if you haven't already done so. Learn from these people, see what God's doing with all of that, and hope you can really be encouraged by what we shared today. And I've had a lot of fun going back through, watching these old clips, thinking about what God's doing, and I'm super excited for what's next. So I hope you are too. Stay with us. Keep listening and watching every week. Got more for you in the next couple of weeks. Can't wait for you to see what it is. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.